Sprout it from the rooftops. Today we talk seed starting here on the Gardening Simplified Show. Coming to you from Studio A at Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs. It's Stacy Hervella, me, Rick Weist, and our engineer and producer, Adriana Robinson. Okay, talking seed starting. Here we go. Everyone, please be seated. This is going to be fun. Stacy, I was thinking the other day, gaining 3 minutes of light every day here, starting in mid-February, all the way to the summer solstice in June. I think it's June 20th this year. 3 minutes a day, and if I do the calculation, that gives me an extra 6 hours by the time we get there. What I can do with 6 hours of time.
Yeah, and you can already feel it. Even though it's mid-February, I think that the difference in the light already is so noticeable, especially after work.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Now, it's a great time to plant and, plant indoors some seeds, shop for some seeds. I kind of, to me, it's like buying Christmas decorations in July, or buying a swimsuit in the middle of winter, or buying a snowblower on Labor Day. Great thing to do, and we're going to encourage you to do that. By the way, best time to buy a lawnmower or patio furniture, September or October.
Oh, yeah, they want to clear it out so they can make room for those snowblowers.
So the concept here, no pressure, great selection, and with any activity, the anticipation is half the fun. I do know, having worked in the garden center industry for years, Stacy, that garden seeds and bulbs are two things that are often bought on impulse and never get planted.
Oh my gosh, guilty as charged. Not bulbs. So I've had my share of unplanted bulbs, but seeds for sure. Seeds are the perfect example, or the gardening example of, I don't know what the exact version would be, but your eyes are bigger than your stomach.
Yeah.
Your enthusiasm when you're shopping for seeds might just be a little bit more than your space, your time, your energy, in which case, I feel you. You're in good company.
Oh, it's like visiting the buffet in Las Vegas. So let's touch on a few quick things. Number one, resist the urge to start seedlings too early. They're going to get stretched on you, right? Seeds exist in a state of dormancy, but once the ideal conditions arrive, which you're going to provide, these seeds will sprout and hopefully start to go. Now, it's an ideal time to use some recycled containers. And one of my favorites, Stacy,
yogurt cup.
My yogurt cups. For those of you watching us on YouTube, I think yogurt cups are perfect for the occasion. And who would want to grow uncultured seedlings anyhow?
Indeed.
Right? Yeah. So there you go. You want to be legendary. Make sure to put holes in the bottom, like I did here with my yogurt cup for drainage, because one of the key things with seed starting, Stacy, and germination is that we need the soil to be moist, but not soggy or wet. We can rot, but at the same time, they can dry out too. So it's a little bit of a dance, and I like to water from the bottom up. I find that works well.
Really, even when you have a little tiny seedling that doesn't have the roots down there to actually bring up the moisture.
If you can get enough moisture into that soil, and that brings up a key component, and that is most people will use soilless mixes, a good quality soilless mix that is lightweight and yet is able to hold some moisture. And then we have to provide warmth. Warmth is very, very important. Prior to doing that, for folks who carry over seeds from year to year, maybe you want to test these seeds and check the germination rate.
Yep.
Easy to do, and the math is easy too. If you pick out 10 seeds, roll them up in a moist paper towel, put them in a plastic baggie, and then wait for a little while. And once they've sprouted, wait a little bit longer, giving all of them a chance. And then, of course, with 10 seeds, if seven seeds have germinated, obviously we have a 70% germination rate, and you can see whether or not it's worth it for you to put the effort into it. That said, again, so much fun to go out and buy some new seeds and enjoy doing that. Now, damping off as far as seeds are concerned is a disease that can occur. Suddenly all your seedlings have flopped over. We want to provide plastic or a cover over the top to increase the humidity, but once they've sprouted, boy, we've got to tent that thing, allow a little air, maybe a little fan to run to allow some circulation on these seedlings. Otherwise, we're going to experience damping off. That said, throughout the years, a 50% milled sphagnum over the top of the soil has worked well for me. But in my reading the other day, Stacy, I read chicken grit.
Yeah.
Finely ground stone. Have you heard that
I
before?
have heard that. Yeah, the fine chicken grit, so not the coarse chicken grit. Now, if you don't have chickens, it might not be worth it for you to buy a giant sack of chicken grit to do this. But other similar things will work. I mean, you can use like a coarse sand. I've seen people use, and we use frequently here at the nursery, vermiculite and perlite will work as well. Anything that just kind of keeps that soil surface covered and with lots of airspace on top of it. So nothing too fine and something that packs in like that.
That makes sense. And that's part of the reason why I like the watering from the bottom also, because I like to try to keep the foliage dry once the seedlings have emerged. And then again, circulation is very, very important. Now, once those shoots emerge, the seed initially held whatever that new seedling needed to get it off to the races. But then once the plant develops leaves, starts to photosynthesize, very important that we're applying a water-soluble fertilizer. We're going to have to add some nutrients.
Well, so it really, to me, it depends on if you're starting with a fresh soilless mix from the garden center, which is going to have fertilizer,
yes,
or if you're recycling. Now, I usually recycle my potting soil. I just go out to where I store it for the winter and fill my containers with it. People might say, oh, are you worried about those fungal diseases and all of that? And the answer is I'm not. So first of all, my soil's kept dry over the winter. It's in a big plastic bin. And second of all, overall, soilless mixes like we use in containers and for seed starting generally don't hold on to a lot of moisture. That's the point. So a lot of disease does not develop because they are well drained, and all of those conditions that would normally, foster disease aren't actually occurring. So, I'm always recycling that. So I do use a fertilizer, but I probably would start it, depending on the crop, maybe like I'd do like every 2 weeks in a very low feed.
Like a half strength or something like that. Yeah, which makes perfect sense. All right, let me give you a limerick on my seed starting prowess, so to speak, which isn't always very good. Today I planted some seed. Please grow, to them I plead. I've got dirt and water on my floors, growing something meant for outdoors, and results are not guaranteed. Soon maybe they will sprout. I'll nurture day in, day out. In the mess they offer me hope and help me with winter to cope, even if they just peter out. I studied their germination estimator, but I'm more of a terminator. The packet portrait is very nice. In itself was worth the price. I'll put the picture on my refrigerator. It does bring up a point, Stacy, that buying these seed packets, they have a lot of information on them, and it probably would make sense to read the information.
Oh, definitely. There you can find out all sorts of things, whether or not the seed needs some sort of pre-treatment. Sometimes that might mean filing with a nail file, or, pre-soaking in some cases. Like I know morning glories and nasturtium bigger seeds are often recommended that you pre-soak them. There's all sorts of stuff. Some things will need a little cold treatment. So it's a good idea to get all of your ducks in a row with that information before you embark on the actual planting. Because, one thing about seeds, once they're planted, good luck recovering them if you decide that you wanted to make a change.
You can't unring the bell.
Not
right?
usually.
The old adage, you can't do that. So important to follow the directions on the package, like the depth of the seeds. Some seeds, you mentioned stratification or nicking the seed coat. Some seeds need light in order to germinate, and you're not going to want to plant those too deep. Also, soil temperature is important, generally 70 to 75 degrees, and in some homes, that may be a little difficult to achieve unless you add a little supplemental heat.
Right. And I finally, after many, many years of starting seeds indoors, did invest in some seed starting mats, germination mats. It makes such a difference. Yeah. I mean, the seeds practically leap out of the soil, and they're not that expensive. It was just kind of one of those things where I was like, well, they're growing, so why do I need one? But the difference between them merely growing and really just jumping out of the soil is night and day when you have those germination mats. And that's less chance for something to go wrong during that really crucial germination period.
Absolutely. Also, the seedlings obviously are going to require light and maybe some artificial light from you. If you have a really good window, turning the little containers or the flat so that they're not leaning in one direction, or if you're providing that supplemental light, get it close enough to those seedlings, right?
Yeah. And, last year we talked a little bit about lights before, having lights was like this big thing, like, oh, they're really serious. And now, especially LED lights, they're so powerful. They're so inexpensive. They're cheap to run. I would highly, highly recommend it, because I'm not saying absolutely don't grow seeds if you don't have a grow light. But if you really want vegetable plants that are going to grow well, or flower plants for that matter, that are actually going to grow well and have a good sturdy stem, you've got to get them off to the best start. You can definitely play around with, just doing stuff for the fun of it. But if you're serious about the crop that you're growing, a light's the way to go.
So where do you stand on the tickle camp? A lot of people say get a little paintbrush and tickle them. Where do you stand in that camp?
I usually keep a fan on them for a certain amount of hours once they get a little bit on the taller side. So that does it for me.
Just some kind of circulation. Plants on Trial is coming up next here on the Gardening Simplified Show. We'll see what Stacy has in store. And a reminder, of course, you can visit us at our website, gardeningsimplifiedonair.com, and we'll put the show notes there. Plants on Trial next. Stay tuned.
Greetings, gardening friends, and welcome back to the Gardening Simplified Show. While we were on break, we were chatting about seed starting, and we got a helpful tip from Adriana, our producer, that I just wanted to share out there for anyone who's getting all excited about the heat germination mats. They are a great idea. They are great for seedlings, but Adriana shares that they are also good for cats. And not surprising when you think about a cat and its affinity for a sunlit patch in your yard, in your room or whatever. Well, similarly, it has an affinity for that warm seedling heat mat that you might be trying to use, and no compunction whatsoever about knocking your seedlings out of the way to get to that warmth.
So instead of being a lap cat, it's a mat cat.
It's a mat cat. Yes. So
and I can see why they like it.
So anyway, a little word of advice there from Adriana, who fortunately did not lose any seedlings last year, but could have because of Fuego, the heat mat loving cat. So, and I did want to just add one last thing to our seed conversation from experience as well. When I first started gardening, I would read about, I had a seed starting book, and I would read the packets, and it would say, sow directly in the ground. And I would say, yeah, for some people, maybe I'm starting this stuff indoors. Mm-hmm. I can do this. Those rules are for other people. And the simple fact is, now with many years of gardening experience under the belt, that it is good advice, and you really should follow those instructions. And when something says that it is best direct sown, which is to say putting it directly in the ground or container outside where you want it to grow, that's true. Mm-hmm. You can certainly experiment, and I would never want to say, oh, don't even try. But, I would say if you're going to experiment, save some of your seed to sow directly, and you will notice the difference. I think lettuce is a great example. You get real antsy, you sow some lettuce seed indoors just to get a head start. It grows that long stem, and it's laying down on the soil, and then you direct sow some lettuce, and it comes up, and it's beautiful, and it grows exactly like you think it should. So not to discourage the spirit of experimentation, but you don't want to, sow all your seed in one indoor basket, as it were.
I think it's a great point. Try both.
Yeah.
Do both and experiment. And of course, make sure to look at the timing on the package. Also go to the last frost date. Do a little mathematics there as you get into the
Absolutely.
project.
So anyway, all for planting seed, and seed is the inspiration for today's plant on trial. And today's plant on trial is Stillwater's clematis. Now, you probably have a lot of people out there going, what? Clematis and seed? What's going on here? Mm-hmm. But clematis, of course, everybody loves clematis for their flowers. They're large, they're super colorful, they're super showy. But I personally think that the seed heads are equally, if not more, that might be a little bit of a stretch, but at least equally as delightful as the flowers on a clematis. Wouldn't you agree?
Certainly interesting.
Yeah. Right? So I was asking around in the office today as I was thinking about the show, what the seed pods of clematis remind different people here of. So a couple things: fireworks, puffballs, pinwheels, something from a Dr. Seuss book, especially the truffula trees. And if you are of a certain age and fandom, tribbles from the classic Star Trek episode.
That is great. I like that.
So one of those things hopefully spoke to you as you are listening to the show, or if you're watching on YouTube, then you've already hopefully seen the picture that Adriana is going to put in the YouTube show. But they're so neat. So the seed head, you know, the center of a clematis is fairly fluffy in and of itself, but that seed head that the flower becomes, it's just this beautiful round ball of these sort of stems with feathery, silky white, almost feathers on them. And they're absolutely gorgeous when the flower fades in spring or summer, depending on the type of clematis you have. In the case of still waters, that's going to be, the first bloom is going to start winding down by early summer. And they have this just silky white and green look. And then as the season progresses, those turn brown, and then again, that feathery stuff kind of develops. And so it's just this swirly, fluffy ball on your plant. And they're so interesting.
Yeah, it's as fun as the flowers. And to me, it's fireworks. They go kabloom.
Yeah.
It's just really cool.
So, it's kind of one of those things that I think it's really unsung. And I think it's even nicer to use in an arrangement later in the season. And to just keep an open mind about the ornamentation that these seed pods, even if you bought a clematis for its flowers, bring to the garden in addition to those flowers. But let's get to still waters clematis, since that is today's plant on trial and what we are focusing on. Now, I do want to say its seed heads are not out of the ordinary. They are just as fabulous as any other clematis out there, but its flowers are very, very interesting. And I have found it difficult to find the right words to describe their color. And the closest I can come is icy violet.
Icy violet.
Yes. So they kind of have they have a cool purpley, bluey tone, but also like some white in there. And it almost gives it kind of like a glowing effect in the garden. So
beautiful.
A lighter color, but certainly with those purple and blue tones. And just, like I said, sort of an iciness. It's really kind of ethereal, almost sky-like. And it's not one that you find in a lot of other plants. I can think of few, if any. I love the Crystal Spires Azure Salvia from Proven Winners Perennials. This is much more purple than that. So I was kind of racking my brain, and I can't quite think of anything that comes close to the flowers of still waters clematis. So if you're watching YouTube, you'll see them. Otherwise, check us out at gardeningsimplifiedonair.com for some photos, or our Instagram page to see what that looks like. Now, one of the most incredible combinations that I have ever seen in my time working here for Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs was when a gardener planted still waters clematis with black lace elderberry.
Oh, wow.
And it was just stunning. Now, black lace elderberry is a plant that does not need any further ornamentation. It's a very highly ornamental plant with black foliage and finely dissected. But the color of those two, and I think that is a really great point of inspiration for using still waters clematis in your garden, is that it can take any of those dark leaf foliaged plants or dark leaf plants, whether it's a black leaf, a purple leaf, trees, shrubs, perennials. And a lot of times, as much as I love that dramatic dark foliage, it can kind of turn into a black hole in the landscape. It can kind of just like suck all the light out of the landscape. And by combining it with this really unique color, it just brings light and life and interest to the combination.
You're on a roll here. I'm just letting you go. This is inspirational because I want to see this in my landscape, regardless of whether or not you pronounce it clematis or me, clematis.
Well, it's okay. There's no wrong pronunciations, only wrong spellings, as we say. As long as you can walk into the garden center and get the plant that you're looking for, you did good. Personally,
I like the way you say it better than I do, but I can't help it.
Old habits die hard. I definitely feel that. So this is a great plant for that, and it's a great plant, as are any clematis, vining clematis, to spruce up any kind of hedge or evergreen. And this is a trick that I learned as a rooftop gardener in New York City, is plant a clematis by the base of like an arborvitae hedge and use that shrub or tree as a support for the plant. And the clematis will have no trouble finding its way, all through the plant, and it will come out, and these fabulous flowers will just peek out where you least expect them. It's like letting nature do your gardening for you, and it just looks amazing. And I think sometimes when you take yourself out of the equation, and let those surprises happen, that's when you find it to be, really rewarding, and you can take full credit. Don't worry, we won't tell.
I'm inspired. This is excellent. Now, Stacy, where was this plant developed?
So this was developed in the Netherlands by a world-renowned clematis expert named Wim Snoyer. I don't speak Dutch, so forgive me, Mr. Snoyer and company, if I have mispronounced your name. But he's written books on clematis. He's a clematis breeder and appreciator extraordinaire, and he's also the breeder of some of our other clematis in the Proven Winners line, and certainly Stillwaters is one of our absolute favorites from him. So it's hardy from USDA zones 4 through 9. So I think we're covering the needs of our cold climate and warm climate friends with this one. So wide range, going to be about 4 to 7 feet tall and about 3 to 5 feet wide. Always hard to judge those sizes with a vine, but it's going to want support. This is a full vining clematis, and like other clematis, you're going to want the feet in the shade and the head in the sun. So plant it where the roots are going to be shaded. Another great reason to plant it, at the base of a shrub or tree, where that's going to provide that shade, and then the clematis can figure out the rest of it on its own. But then you want sun or part sun on those leaves and flowers for the best results. But those roots, they need to stay cool, and they do not like heat. They don't like to dry out. They don't like it to be too wet. And when you plant your clematis, you're going to find out why, because you're going to see they have these thick, fleshy roots that's really like nothing else. And so they need a little bit of special care. Well, we'll give you all the special care instructions on growing Stillwaters clematis or any clematis in your garden at gardeningsimplifiedonair.com. But right now we've got to take a break. When we come back, we're answering your garden questions. So please stay tuned. Greetings, gardening friends, and welcome back to the Gardening Simplified Show. It's time to answer your gardening questions, your pressing horticultural issues. 'Tis the season. The issues are only going to become more pressing for the next couple months when things start to emerge or not, and pruning, and people have a lot of questions. So you're always welcome to reach out to us at help, HELP, at gardeningsimplifiedonair.com, or just visit gardeningsimplifiedonair.com. Use our contact form, leave a comment on YouTube, leave a comment on Instagram. We all talk to each other. We'll get it, and we'll get you the information that you need. And the questions are definitely rolling in because people are thinking about the gardening. So what's in the mailbag today?
Well, in the mailbag, Randy writes to us, I'm going to buy your 1 gallon size Let's Dance Big Band and Wee Bit Grumpy hydrangeas for pots. I live either zone 6 or 7. Things have changed in the zones. Yeah, you're right about that, Randy. Most of us got a raise this past year. I live in between Charleston and Huntington, West Virginia. I'd like to know the proper size pot for them, best soil or miniature, and other pointers for them.
Yeah, so the zone here is going to be fairly irrelevant to the answer that I'm going to give you. But generally speaking, and especially when it comes to big leaf hydrangeas and other plants that can be quite sensitive to overwatering, I recommend that you don't go with your ultimate sized container.
At the start.
At the start, yes, okay. Correct. Yeah. So, right. You certainly will see those really huge containers. And I do recommend, again, when a plant is relatively susceptible to overwatering, that you don't want to start with a plant with a container that's going to leave a lot of extra soil around the plant that the roots haven't grown into. Because what happens is that just holds on to water. It's like surrounding your plant with sponges. Now, some plants are more sensitive to this than others. But I would recommend basically starting with something that's only about anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe 6 inches larger in diameter than the size of the container that you purchase. So Randy said that he's looking at 1 gallon size Let's Dance Big Band and Wee Bit Grumpy, which yes, is its real name. I don't think we've covered that on Plants on Trial yet, but we'll have to tell the story of Grumpy's name when we do. Those 1 gallon sizes in a Proven Winners Colored Choice 1 gallon container are going to be 10 to 12 inches in diameter, so across the top.
It's not named after me, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay, good. Continue.
So, and you're never grumpy. So it definitely couldn't even be named after you.
Okay,
Wee Bit Giddy, on the other hand, maybe. So 10 to 12 inches. So you're going to want to look similarly for a container that is somewhere in that 12 to 16 inch range. So that way you don't have a ton of extra soil. The plant's going to be able to live in that for a good 3 years, if not longer. And, you know, people also need to remember that the container itself has a dwarfing effect on the plant. By having its roots contained, that has the effect of keeping the plant a little bit smaller. That's why bonsais work, right? Mm-hmm. They're huge trees that you cram into this little container, and by restricting their root room, it does in turn restrict the overall size of the plant. So I don't like to start off with, you know, putting it in a giant 24-inch municipal container. I like to go along, and you know that it will be time to transplant it when it's really hard to keep your plant watered, when it falls down very often, you know, it blows over in the wind, or its flowering really becomes diminished. But it should last a good, I'd say 3 seasons at least.
That's great. So you're recommending not to do the set it or forget it thing where we right away put it into a big pot. Now, of course, when I was on Cape Cod this past summer, they were putting them into these larger fabric type containers, but they were sinking them into the ground. So in this case, you're recommending to monitor the plant and upsize when we need to.
Right. So definitely go larger than the container that you're purchasing, but don't go extreme. You know, again, go in that 4 to maybe 6 range. The more sensitive your plant is to overwatering, the more dry conditions it needs, the more careful you need to be with that. And along those same lines, plants that are very sensitive to water, or are very, very drought tolerant, you can put those into shallower bowl type containers. But if they need a lot of water, you're going to want one of the more proportional, equally tall as wide, sort of like the classic flower pot shape.
Fantastic. Okay, Stacy, we have a question from Ann about a snowball plant. My snowball plant has some kind of worms that eat all the leaves to skeleton-like. I searched online and found out it might be viburnum leaf beetle. How do I get rid of them?
Yeah, so great question. And definitely if you have skeletonized viburnum leaves, VLB, viburnum leaf beetle, is almost certainly the culprit. They have very distinctive damage, but very, very widespread damage. And you know I love insects. And normally when it comes to insects on plants, I'm like, they can tolerate it. You know, it's okay. Hand pick them if you see them, but don't lose any sleep over it. Well, viburnum leaf beetle is definitely an exception to that because they are extremely destructive. And because they do skeletonize the plant so badly, very often they can't recover. And 1 or 2 seasons of that, and you will lose your viburnum. Now, we did have a question, I think, on viburnum leaf beetle last season during the viburnum leaf beetle season, which for us here in Michigan is usually around June, early July. But I'm really glad that Ann wrote this question because now is the time to start looking for viburnum leaf beetle eggs on your plant. And this is the best, most effective chemical-free way to manage viburnum leaf beetle because the way that they lay their eggs on the viburnum stems is very, very distinctive, and they'll be very easy to spot right now without any foliage on the plant. And they look kind of like pits or bumps, depending on how old the egg sites are. And they're going to be all in a line on your viburnum stems. So I'm going to post some links at the show notes at gardeningsimplifiedonair.com so you can look and get familiar with what it looks like. And then go out and inspect your plants very carefully. Now, most of the pictures that I see, the egg laying sites tend to be more on thinner, newer growth. So they're not going to be usually way down at the base of the plant on the really thick growth. But once you know what to look for, they're going to really stand out to you when you're looking at your viburnum plant. And then you can take them and just snip them out. Now, that is going to mean that you are removing flowers because viburnums bloom on old wood. So that means that they have their flower buds on the plant right now to bloom this spring. But in this case, I would say, if the question here is a non-toxic, completely effective pest control method that reduces flowering, but over time, you're going to disrupt that life cycle and hopefully your plant won't continue to get leaf beetle, it's worth it. It's not going to harm the plant to have those cut off. Of course, it will harm perhaps your enjoyment of it, but so will the viburnum leaf beetle. So, so to me, it's kind of worth it to just do that. And of course, if you are snipping them out, you're going to want to make sure that you throw them away. Don't just drop them on the ground under the plant. Don't put them in your compost pile. These are plants that you're going to want to take, a plastic sack out with you and fill it up, tie it tightly and put it in the garbage can and throw them away.
February and March. Great time to be out scouting in the landscape.
It really
is.
Your
point is well taken. You want to be out there and you want to be looking. The other day I went into the compound and the compound was breached.
Oh, no.
By a rabbit. Ate my roses down to the nubs.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was frustrated. But I was out there scouting, and that's what you want to do in February and March. And by the way, to the mailbag, I sent a picture to Adriana of the deer around my home, and it proves the point that deer can read. I put up signs that said no deer allowed, and I have a picture of a deer that's standing there reading the sign. So,
well, I guess you're going to need a no rabbits allowed sign now.
Yes.
Because whether or not they'll read it, I don't know, but might as well cover all your bases. So yeah, winter is a great time for scouting and dealing with these pests in a way that, again, doesn't require any chemicals. So a couple of other things you can be looking for if you are out there is tent caterpillars. So tent caterpillars have a very distinctive egg mass that would be on your susceptible plants. So your cherries, your crab apples, regular apples, that kind of thing. Very easy to spot those masses, especially in a tree where you've had tent caterpillars in the past. And you can just take a putty knife and scrape that mass right off and get rid of it. And in a more timely concern, spotted lanternfly eggs can also be spotted, also be scouted in winter.
Oh, dread it.
I know, me too. Me too. You do want to look, of course, at what both of these look like. The lanternfly eggs have kind of a gross, putty-looking yellow or gray kind of clumpy look. But if you have them, you can scrape them off. You can put them into a bag, a bucket of soapy water, alcohol. There's a lot of different things you can do with them. But we'll put all the resources out there now. But it's a good way, especially if we have a nice day and you want to be outside, but you don't really know what you should be doing. Scouting for some of these pest eggs is a great way to spend that time.
Get out there and scout. Do it. Yeah, it makes a difference. Gina has a challenge on her hands. How can I get rid of my zebra grass? It's in a tight space and I can't get a shovel under it. Stacy, I'm thinking she's probably talking about the miscanthus.
Yep.
And those clumps can get very, very large. Now, I have some novel ways to do it, which involve a toe strap. But if you don't have a pickup or a bumper hitch or whatever, maybe not. You're going to need a little bit of help. It's work.
Ornamental grasses, and everyone who's listened to the show has heard us sing their praise, and I know especially you are a fan. But if and when the day comes that you need to remove one, that is when their liabilities truly make themselves known.
That's when you cash in on ways you've helped your neighbors over the past year and get them in on the act.
Yes. It's not an easy task. The roots are very fibrous. They're very dense. And, when you have that thick sort of crown of the plant, it is very hard to get into. And poor Gina, it sounds like it's making it even worse that she's in a tight space and can't really get any leverage with the shovel. So I don't even think it would be that easy to remove with a truck, because how are you going to get something around? Okay.
Yeah, just joking. Really, technically the way to do it, and I have done this, very sharp shovel, sharpen the edge of the shovel and divide it into quarters before trying to lift it out of the ground. Then once it's divided into quarters, it's easier to pull out. You can share it with friends and neighbors.
Yeah. Or if you just want it gone, which you probably will by the time you finish the job and you're in a tight space, Gina, one thing you could consider is investing in a good sharp mattock or pickaxe, which is going to give you a lot more of the chopping effect. So you're going to, be using a lot of upper body strength and a lot of shoulders into it. But that sharp, it's almost like hacking at it with an axe or something. You can get a better swing. You don't need as much space. And as long as that's sharp, and I think sharpness is the key here, no matter what you're using, you should hopefully be able to get it out. Good luck, Gina. I don't want to be flip about it, but it is not a job.
And whatever you do, wear safety glasses. And I'm not joking here. I mean, boy, oh boy, you're using an axe or sharp shovel or a pickaxe. Wear some safety glasses.
Yeah, I once saw a neighbor trying to dig out an ornamental grass, and I said, "Oof, that's a tough job. I don't envy you." And next thing I came back, I thought, "Oh, I wonder if he got that grass out." No, he just abandoned the project. So anyway, thank you all so much for your questions. I hope those answers were helpful and give you something actionable for your next steps. If you have a question for us, you can always reach us at help, H-E-L-P, at gardeningsimplifiedonair.com. We're going to take a little break now, but when we come back, we have a special guest for Branching News. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Gardening Simplified Show. It's time for Branching News, and today we have a talk with Ben Wright, who is the National Account Manager for Leafjoy by Proven Winners. Of course, houseplants have, foliage plants have been very, very popular throughout the years, but there was quite the explosion in interest in 2020. And certainly the selection provided by Leafjoy, fascinating to take a look at. All this interest in houseplants fueled by Instagram and social media and a new generation of plant lovers, supply and demand, but what keeps it going? Ben, thanks so much for joining us here on the Gardening Simplified Show.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. So, Ben, what does keep it going? Now, I personally believe that the high interest in houseplants continues if, number one, people have success. And I know you guys do a lot to ensure the fact that the consumer has success with Leafjoy plants, bringing nature inside, and then also new cultivars. But let's start with the success. I've seen a lot of houseplants throughout the years working in the garden center industry, but boy, Leafjoy is different and interesting because of the information you provide the consumer right there at the point of purchase. I think that will really help keep this interest in houseplants moving forward.
Yeah, you're spot on about that. The tag is really important. We want to make sure consumers always have the information they need to succeed, but that starts a lot earlier than just at the tag level that they see at their local garden center. It starts with how we grow our plants and where we grow them. We're actually located in Stewart's Draft, Virginia, in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And the reason we're here is all about temperature and light levels. We're actually able to maintain a nice average daily temperature here below 85 degrees, so our foliage always grows consistent and with the same quality, whether it be the middle of summer or the dead of winter. One of the great advantages of that is our controlled environment growing, and so the consumer does better because we can control the humidity, the light levels, the temperatures in our greenhouse. We even have our own carbon capture system where we can capture CO2 and pump it into the greenhouse to encourage more growth. And so the consumer gets a plant that's more resilient and they see more success. It's really about this holistic approach to growing houseplants. So it starts with how you grow them and then making sure you give people the right information. And those tags, they identify where the plants should go in the home through really easy to understand information. Great example was a low light plant we call Cocoon Collection. These are plants perfect for interior rooms. Spa scene, humidity loving plants perfect for a bathroom. Atrium Collection, highlight loving plants perfect for an exterior room. And Work Life, space saving plants perfect for a home office. So when we identify spaces in the home and then give variety specific care information about watering, fertilizers, light levels, and the name of the plant, since the consumer is armed with more information to succeed. And we think it just takes all of that to drive their success.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key, Ben, because, again, I have seen that, for example, in the bulb industry when people try to grow bulbs or whatever. If they are successful in that first venture, and boy, if I had a dime for everybody who's come up to me and said, I have a brown thumb, everything I touch dies, or I can't grow a cactus or whatever, going in here, Ben, you're basically sowing the seeds for success right from the very start.
Yeah, we believe here at Leafjoy that more people have a green thumb than they realize. They're just not given the right plant or the right information to succeed.
Exactly.
So if you give someone that information and they succeed the first time, they're going to keep giving it a try and discover a new passion and love, and they do in fact have a green thumb.
So Ben, going back to what you said when you're talking about how different things are growing at your facility there, can you kind of paint the picture for our listeners of what it looks like inside a greenhouse where houseplants are being produced?
Yeah, so our houseplants are grown a little bit differently. Most tropical foliage in the United States is grown in the South in fields with shade cloth. Mm-hmm. And there's a few disadvantages we see with that, and we think we answered with our facility here. And one of them is it's not a controlled environment. So you have a lot of bugs that can stress the plant. Your humidity levels swing quite a bit with every weather system that comes through. And then you can't control your moisture or rain levels like you can in a greenhouse. And so we grow in a 5-acre greenhouse, now expanding to add another 5 acres, which is really exciting. But our greenhouse, when you walk into it, the first thing you're going to notice is how tall it is. We have 21 feet from the gutters to the floor. And what that does is it means our plants at ground level, even on a hot summer day, they don't get warm because it takes all day for that heat to get down to ground level. And then it really is more than just the height of the building. One thing you'll notice is all the poles are powder-coated white. Have any of you ever leaned up against a hoop house with bare metal poles in the summer?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That is really, really warm, right? You're likely to burn yourself,
sure.
You know?
Sure.
And so every pole is powder-coated white, so that way they don't hold that heat in and then radiate it at night. So we keep the temperature down and keep the plants happy, so they don't enter summer dormancy. And then our climate system is completely automated. It's state-of-the-art out of Europe. And so it includes 2 layers of shade cloth that we can set the exact light levels for each area in the greenhouse depending on what we're growing. And then we have high-pressure foggers to set the humidity levels in those spaces. And watering is really important. We want to make sure the plants are targeted with exactly the water they need and not too much so they have crown rot or root rot issues, right? And so we use an incredible flooding floor system called Earth Good Flooring. And what's so cool about it is I can fill a bay from below and drain it in under 15 minutes with no sitting water. And so we make sure every single plant leaves this greenhouse really just as happy as it can be. And what makes me really happy is how sustainable that is. We actually capture that water and it goes back into our large 50,000 gallon holding tanks and is reused. So we don't waste any water. There's no runoff. And then even our natural gas boilers that are used to heat the greenhouse in the winter, we capture that CO2 like I mentioned earlier, and we pump it into the greenhouse to encourage more growth. So the plants are more resilient and healthy. And then, because we're not outdoors, we can use good bugs to control the bad bugs. Mm-hmm. So when you have bugs, we can use an integrated pest management approach to attack the things we don't want on our houseplants and make sure the consumers don't bring a plant home that's infested with some sort of pest that could affect their other plants.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's absolutely key. And folks, we're talking to Ben Wright. He's National Account Manager of Leafjoy by Proven Winners. Ben, I would agree with you because throughout the years working in the garden center industry, I've been a purchasing agent for foliage plants, many bought from tropical regions. And Stacy, when they arrive, sometimes those boxes are soaking wet, collapsing, and you never know what's going to crawl out of the thing. So this This is fantastic. Ben, talk to us about cultivars, because looking at your website, the Leafjoy plants, I love the names that you've given to many of these plants. But talk to us about cultivars, because people get excited about new introductions. The houseplant industry is no longer a Boston fern and a pothos and a Philly in the corner. It is the cultivars being produced in this golden age of plant breeding are fabulous.
Yeah, they truly are. And some of it is not only about the new varieties, but some of it is taking the old varieties and bringing new genetics into it. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite varieties we call our Klingon Ficus benjamina. And what I love about that plant is it doesn't drop leaves. When you think of a ficus, you remember the one your grandmother had or you got as a wedding gift 25 years ago. And anytime you looked at it wrong, or breathed on it, or you changed the temperature in the house 1 degree, it would lose all of its leaves. And I have some personal experience with this. My mom and my father got a ficus from my grandfather as a wedding gift 25 years ago. And I always remember every single year we would lose the leaves on that tree about twice a year because, the change in temperature or humidity, or when we bring it outside in the summer. And to now have a ficus that doesn't drop leaves is just absolutely mind-boggling me, and I think that is really cool. So I do want to mention that one as something that I think is special. Mm-hmm. But in regards to these new cultivars, we're really excited to be actively working with breeders that have over 500 species of Hoya in a variety of colors to appeal to everyone. And so that is a line we're actively expanding. And then, of course, the variegated sports. The plants that people are craving in the world, they're starting to become more commercially viable as work is being done to stabilize those genetics. So when you think of a Monstera Thai constellation or a philodendron white wizard, these are those plants with whites and greens and beautiful colors that at one point may have cost hundreds of dollars. But there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes with the breeders to make them more approachable to the common consumer. And your plant collector can now approach a plant that may have been out of their budget before, which has me very excited.
So, Ben, I always ask folks who we interview to give our listening and viewing audience a couple of favorites, your personal favorites, that you could share with folks and why. So give me a couple of personal favorites of yours. We mentioned the ficus, of course, and I agree. Here in Michigan, the minute we hit October or November, 50% of the foliage falls off. So that's a great introduction. But give me two favorites of yours personally that you have got to have in your home.
Yeah, I first off absolutely love our hydroponic line of houseplants. We call them our H2O series. And I travel a lot in my role. I'm gone for sometimes a week at a time, and it can be stressful to leave the plants at home. And so what I love about these plants is I can be gone if I didn't have other plants for up to a month at a time and still come home to beautiful foliage. So they really are the easy care houseplant, perfect for a busy professional or someone who travels a lot. Beautiful foliage in a glass bowl with a cork, with just a little bit of water, and actually best use regular tap water. It's easy for the consumer. And so that is one of my favorite items. I'm also love our Living Lace Fern Divana. Ooh. It is a beautiful fern with distinctly ruffled and scalloped arching fronds. And it's got these incredible leaves that emerge light green, and then they develop a powdery kind of blue-green patina as they age. And those are just absolutely stunning. Most people run when they see ferns because they're so delicate. But I found this to be a very hardy fern, and it just draws my eyes in every single time.
I love that one. It is, and it's not one that I would have thought, would be easy for people to grow under normal household conditions. So what's your tip for growing that one successfully in a normal home?
Yeah, my tip, that plant belongs in I believe our Spossing collection, if I have the information at the top of my head correctly. But, I really think it's important not to overlove your house plant. I think that's where a lot of people have a hard time. we tend to overwater them or overcare for them. And so, I'm a simple houseplant person. I've discovered my passion for it in the last 2 to 3 years. And for me, it's as simple as I stick my finger in the soil. And if that top inch of soil is dry, then at that point, I look at watering it. I don't stick to a regular schedule because depending on whether your air conditioner has kicked on or off, or you've got your heater running, or it's been a cloudy week with low light, your plants may have not used the water you gave them the week before, and they may not need additional water. So I think it's important to be successful with this kind of variety or others, but to make sure you're flexible in your watering schedule. Really check the moisture content of the soil instead of just blindly giving your plant the same amount of water every week on a schedule.
We're chatting with Ben Wright. He's the National Account Manager, Leafjoy by Proven Winners in Stewart's Draft, Virginia. Ben, you mentioned the H2O line, beautiful plants in really fun containers to grow houseplants. But I'm sure for our listeners and our viewers, one of the questions in their mind is, how long can a plant last in just pure water? In other words, how often do you need to change the water? What's your position on that?
Yeah, I have seen plants in these water globes go for 1 to 2 years. And so we choose varieties that are going to do well in this environment. Eventually, it might get too big for that container, but every single variety we've chosen to be in our water line is successful in that environment. Our advice is to change the water every 1 to 2 months or as needed to fill it up so all your roots are submerged in water. And that's it. It's designed to be easy, set it and forget it.
Well, Ben, I was in Tampa, Florida, and I went to an exhibit of Leafjoy plants, and I can tell you that the people I was with and other folks there, they gravitated towards growing plants in just water. They loved it. They were attracted to it. So if you could get a plant to do well for a year or two, I would think that would really be appealing to the general consumer.
Yep, absolutely. What I love about it is we all love gifting flowers, but what if you could gift a live plant that you don't have the stress or the guilt factor of gifting to someone, like you said, with a brown thumb who may kill it? So what is so cool about these is all of a sudden, instead of gifting flowers or gifting in addition to flowers, now we can gift houseplants without that guilt of, oh, maybe this person isn't in a position to care for it, right? Mm-hmm. And so it becomes a new option as gifts for friends and families. I love it as a good housewarming present. I have some friends who just bought a house, and first thing I thought of was, let's get them some bowls for every room in their house.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, love it. I've seen you guys, it's not just, this is just a little, vial full of water. You're doing all sorts of interesting things, different shapes, really unexpected new ways to enjoy houseplants. And I think that really just, again, opens up a new world, just as is the plant breeding and coming up with new varieties does.
Yeah, absolutely. It's making people reconsider how they grow plants or what they grow them to be successful in the environment. We're always working with our breeders to bring us new varieties that'll do well in both soil and water, so we have more options for the consumer as time goes.
Ben, as far as the breeders are concerned, question for you, just a curiosity thing for me. Who creates the names for the plants? I think you've got great names, like you take a pothos and calling it Beautiful for a trailing plant. You come up with some really creative names. Who comes up with these names? Because I do believe the name of a plant is important.
You're absolutely right. It's really important. It helps establish that connection that someone has to a plant. The number of people in our team who tell me they create their own personal names for their plants when they get home is always staggering to me. It makes me smile, some of the fun names people come up with. But here at Leafjoy, we work closely with our partners at Proven Winners to help come up with a list of potential names. And then our team here at the greenhouse votes on them. And so we really take a collaborative approach to choosing names for our new foliage. So that way, not only does it make sense for the variety, but our team here at the greenhouse has a sense of ownership in those new names. They get to say, wow, I helped come up with Beautiful, or a living lace savanna was my idea. And so it's really exciting to have that kind of team approach to these sort of things.
I know the feeling. The names of plants that I have, suggested that have won, you do have a different approach to that plant than you would if it wasn't your idea. I feel that. So, you guys have had so many interesting new ideas, new packaging, new varieties. So what's next for the Leafjoy line?
Yeah, we're really excited to bring our Leafjoy Littles line, which is our small 9-centimeter consumer-friendly houseplant for those with a budget in mind. They're perfect for a standalone pottery or in a dish garden. And there's lots and lots of colors. We have beautiful Phoetonias in pinks and reds and whites and greens. And so we have all these really beautiful plants in what's about a 3.5-inch container at a really approachable low price point, almost like a sampler houseplant. And so if you're nervous about houseplants or you think you have a brown thumb, this really enables someone to get that proven winner's quality that they know they can trust at a price point that's more approachable. And so they can put their toes in the sand, as someone would say, with houseplants.
So the 9-centimeter is the diameter of the container, not the size of the plant.
That's correct.
Okay.
So,
just want to make sure in case anyone's trying to do math about the size of the plant in their car or whatever right now.
Yeah.
And these sound like they would be perfect for like shower gifts, favors, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they make a great gift item as well. And so I just love the emphasis we've done on making sure there's a bright selection of colors to really make anyone smile. We really pride ourselves here at Leafjoy at having over 120 different varieties in our program. So we really think there's a plant for everyone. And so we hope we've got the assortment for those people.
Ben, just a couple more quick questions. One, National Plant of the Year, National House Plant of the Year, I believe is an alocasia. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, that's correct. It's our mythic alocasia dragonite. It is a beautifully textured alocasia that has a small in stature growth, so it's perfect in any room in the home. It won't take up a lot of space. And the texture, people don't believe it's real. It almost feels like plastic. If you were in Tampa and you had the pleasure of feeling that plant, I always tell people, you got to feel this plant. You won't believe it's real. It is incredible.
Ben, if folks are interested in going to their favorite garden center or their local garden center and saying, I want you to carry Leafjoy by Proven Winners because I want to buy these plants, what's the best way folks can get more information about Leafjoy? Is there a website they can visit?
Yeah, there's a couple really great resources. First, if you want to know what of your local garden centers carry Leafjoy, you can go on to provenwinners.com and they've got a store finder. It's really convenient. You can type in your zip code and it'll tell you exactly which garden centers near you currently carry Leafjoy. And then if you're a garden center looking to bring Leafjoy to your consumers and your customers, you can reach out to us. Just stop on our website at theplantcompany.com or contact us at sales@theplantcompany.com.
That's fantastic. His name is Ben Wright, National Account Manager, Leafjoy by Proven Winners. Ben, thanks so much for joining us on the Gardening Simplified show today.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Anyone got a fever for a new houseplant? I know I do.
I do.
Well, I will be out shopping this weekend to make my indoors a little bit splashier, and I hope you will too. So thanks so much to Ben from Leafjoy by Proven Winners. Thank you, Rick. And thanks to Adriana. And of course, thanks to all of you for listening. We really appreciate your support, and we'll see you next week.